Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Head to Head. Tonight we have a guest on who maybe those outside the West Midlands might not know of so well, but by the end of this broadcast, you're going to know a lot about her, and I think you're going to find a lot of interesting things to talk about. So, before I give a brief introduction about it, first of all, I just want to welcome, hello, Julie Hambleton, welcome to the show.
Hello, Bill. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. So, just before we get into our conversation, just to let those who may not be aware of it know a little bit about the background. On the 21st of November 1974, two pubs in Birmingham were bombed, the Mulberry Bush and the Tavern in the Town. It was part of the Irish Troubles, and there were 21 people killed and 182 people injured. In 1975, 6 Irishmen were sentenced to life for the bombing, but then the Court of Appeal released those people in 1991. An organisation was being set up with Julie at the forefront of it, known as the Justice for the 21, which has been campaigning tirelessly for justice for the families and to find out what really happened there. And it's opened up a real tin of worms on various fronts with what's gone on with this. But it's something that I think, those of us in the West Midlands obviously already do care a lot about. I certainly do, because that was around the time my parents were in Birmingham around that time. But I think everyone in the country is going to have some interesting things to listen to tonight. So, Julie, without further ado, can we start off at the beginning? And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, and then leading up to those awful events?
Well, I am the youngest of 6 children. My mother and father had a pretty unstable marriage, I'll be polite, and my mother and father were divorced when I was about 5 or 6. And skipping ahead a few years, when I was 11, there were 6 of us. There was Brian, who's the eldest, then Maxine, then Paul, then Gary, then Jane, and then me. Then when I was 11 in 1974, my sister, Maxine, who was 18 at the time, was studying for her A-levels. And she was very forward-thinking, Maxine was, with her friends. And she was studying for French, English and history in her A-levels. So to improve her French, she decided to go to France to go champagne picking in the champagne vineyards.
Good way to improve your French.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Her friend's name was Jane Davies. And Jane was only 17, but they were very good friends. And they went for about 6 weeks. They came back, and Maxine came to see us on, I believe it was about the 19th of November 1974. And Maxine didn't live with us because she, Brian and Paul had just moved into a dilapidated house that our father had purchased for them to live in. And Maxine had decided to have a housewarming party, and she was very creative, Maxine was. She was able to make her own invitation cards, because Maxine was still at school, Brian was studying at college and working as well, and Paul was still in school, so they really had no money. So they didn't have a phone. So Maxine decided to create her own housewarming party invitation cards, because on the Friday, on the 22nd of November, she was going to have this party in their new home. And me and Jane were invited. Mum obviously would allow us to go because she knew that we'd be well looked after. And we were really excited. And I remember Mackie, because we called her Mackie. Mackie made, she'd bought me, I can't remember what she bought, Jane, but she bought me some clogs, because I fell in love with these, and I'll never forget them. They were blue. They were blue clogs, and I fell in love with them. And because she'd not long got a job at Miss Selfridge, and Mum went absolutely mad at her. She said, "Stop wasting your money on them. You've got bills to pay. You need to save your money." And Maxine was a chip off the old block. She was like Mum, very stubborn, very much her own person. Didn't suffer fools gladly. And she said, "It's my money. I'll do what I like with it," sort of thing. And I just loved. I just loved these. I'll always remember them. They were blue clogs. So we just
You got the right colour for a brummie, wasn't it? The blue ones.
Yeah, really, yeah. So she stayed with us. It was possibly on the Tuesday night. It was about the 19th of November, and the following morning, I woke up and because I was always late for school. I hated school with a passion, and I was running out the door, and Mum said, "Aren't you going to give Mackie a kiss?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, forgot." So I went running upstairs, and I jumped on the bed, and I flung my arms around her and said, "Love you, Mackie. I'll see you Friday. I'm really excited to see you Friday." And that was the last time I saw her alive, because a day later, she was dead. She had gone to the Tavern in the Town pub, which was one of the two pubs. There's two pubs that were bombed, the Mulberry Bush and the Tavern in the Town. And the Tavern in the Town was a pub in a cellar, so it was down some stairs. And cowards, well, there's no other word for them, cowards planted bombs, and out of the two pubs killed 21 people and left over 200 with life-changing injuries. And Maxine had only gone there to meet her friends, to meet Jane Davis, who she'd gone to France with, and Jane was also killed. And they were going to show each other their photographs from their trip to their friends. And Thursday night was payday, because back then you were paid every week and usually on a Thursday. And that was the only reason why she was there. Maxine was one of 21 to be killed. And the youngest was only 16.
Yeah, we can see them on the screen now.
And what's on the screen in the middle, you'll see a gravestone. And the reason why you only see a gravestone is for Neil Tommy Marsh. His name was Neil Marsh, but everybody knew him as Tommy. And Neil, there are no pictures of Neil. And with his family's permission, we're allowed to use this because his mother is part of this picture as well. And then to the right of that, in the middle, to the far right, is Paul Anthony Davies, who was only 17. And these two young lads weren't in the pubs. They were merely walking past the Mulberry Bush, and they were killed outright from the blast of the glass hitting them and killing them outright.
And which one of those was Maxine? She was the one above the gravestone, wasn't she?
Yes, she's the one above the gravestone. And then below the gravestone, you've got the two brothers. The one is directly below the gravestone, and then to the left, those are the Riley brothers, and Desmond and Eugene. And the one had just found out that his wife was expecting a baby, and his wife had a baby posthumously who never got to meet his dad. And also Paul Anthony Davis in the middle to the far right, the good-looking fella with his hat on. He was big into karate, really into fitness. Never drank. I mean, they were too young to drink, but they weren't into drink at all. And he too, his girlfriend had a posthumous child as well, Paul, who never knew his dad either. And then he also already had a daughter, but she was only, I think, 9 months old, So she has no memories of her father.
And it's notable with these pictures, you can see, you know, the so full of life, the people on it. You know, as you were talking about, they all had so much ahead of them. And they
well,
were...
the picture in the top left corner, that's Stephen Wally. Stephen Wally was an only child. And he was due to have a blind date with Lynn Bennett, who is next to Paul Anthony Bridgewater in the middle. She's to the left of Paul on the far right. And they were to meet to have a blind date, and they were both killed.
Well, you know, it shows the real extent of the human tragedy when you hear, you know, it's not just names, it's not just pictures, it's the lives of those people and what was going on and what they had ahead of them. What was there any warning given by the bombers that this was going to happen?
Well, that's there's you see, there's contested viewpoints on this when we because for those who may not be aware, my brother and I started campaigning in nearly a decade ago, and we had the support from so many incredible people. But cut a long story short, we started to fight for an inquest because we never had an inquest. An inquest opened the day after the bombings, and then it was adjourned because the police claimed that they'd caught the killers, the murderers, which of course we now know, the men who became known as the Birmingham Six, we now know they were not the cowards who committed this heinous crime. But we have had to fight for an inquest because the police federation, the emergency services, the secret services MI5 and MI6 were fighting us in the pre-inquest hearings to stop us from having an inquest. Now, why would the very people who are meant to represent us and serve and protect us want to stop us from having an inquest? But that is exactly what they were trying to do. But we have a fantastic legal team. We had a fantastic QC who represented us pro bono. And eventually the senior coroner, Mrs. Louise Hunt, found in our favour and said that we had the right to have an inquest. And in the inquest, it came out that as far as a forewarning was concerned, even though this had already been out in the news, that the bombers had allegedly tried to make a telephone call with their usual XX coded message that the press would recognise as being real. And they claimed that none of the telephone boxes were working. Well, even as young as I was at the time, I remember that where the tavern in the town was, and it's still there actually. It's not a pub anymore. It's a Chinese buffet, and I personally think, and many people agree, it should be shut down. People were killed down there. How can people? I think if people knew that 11 people were murdered where they were eating, nobody would really want to go down there because it's a graveyard. And it should be closed down as such in memory of those who were murdered. And around the corner from where it is on New Street, there used to be 6 telephone boxes. I remember them. There were 6. You can even get pictures of old Birmingham, and it shows you 6 telephone boxes. And they claim that all of those telephone boxes were out of order, even though the bombers who did commit the murder claim that they tested them earlier in the day. Now, back then, obviously, we didn't have, in 1974, there were no mobile phones. No. I mean, that was all sci-fi. That was all Star Trek stuff back then.
Yeah.
And there were telephone boxes virtually on every street corner back then. And they claim that none of these telephone boxes were working, which of course is utter rubbish. And like everything that these so-called terrorist groups claim, that they like to make things up to suit the book, to cover their own backs. But we don't believe it, and we've never believed it.
No. So that was their justification for no warning, was saying that the telephone boxes didn't work. And, so it's not even bad enough that they attack innocent civilians. They did it with no warning. So it's a crime of extreme proportions. You use the word highness, and it's by any definition of the term, it is a crime against humanity, and the most cowardly murder that could ever be imagined on a mass scale.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you can't underestimate it, and you can't overestimate it either. It is cowardice in its highest forms. It is these specimens claim to be part of humanity. They're not part of humanity. Animals have more respect for themselves. Animals have more value on life than they did, and they do. There was a warning. Somebody did manage to make a telephone call that night to the Birmingham Post and Mail, which is now known as the Birmingham Mail.
Yeah.
Because the warning was given so late, and when the chap who took the call at the Birmingham Post and Mail telephoned the police, it seemed like they were pretty lackadaisical. And this came out in the inquest in 2019. They seemed pretty lackadaisical, where the police who come to the inquest sat there and basically said, "Oh, well, I don't recall that. Oh, I don't remember that." How anyone who was around that night can say, "I don't recall" or "I don't remember"? I'd have to call them a liar, because that was a night that is absolutely embedded and seared into one's memory. It is not something that you would not recall or not remember. And the police apparently that managed to get there within minutes, because that they were coming from Digbeth police station, which is how the road system used to be, that they could have got there in less than a minute in a car.
Yeah.
They decided to go into the rotunda and go and look for the bomb in the rotunda. They didn't bother to empty out the building, but they decided to go looking for the bomb, apparently. Now, no one had said that the bomb was in the rotunda. And you think to yourself, even as a layperson, why on earth would you go looking for a bomb? Your first instinct would be to empty the building and to empty any other premises that are within that vicinity, because all they had to do was walk around from the rotunda into the mulberry bush. The mulberry bush was literally under the rotunda, which is still there.
Oh, yeah, for those who don't know, the rotunda was a shopping centre with various things inside it, wasn't it?
And they didn't do that. They didn't empty any of the buildings. They didn't go around to the pub, which was literally a 10-second walk away. And the bomb exploded in the mulberry bush. And then within minutes, there was a second explosion, and that was in the tavern in the town where my sister Maxine was.
Yeah, and as we've said before, this is the centre of Birmingham. People who would have had nothing to do whatsoever with any disputes in Ireland, one way or the other. These were just everyday people going about their lives, picked out. Now, there's a lot to get through on this, so we can always come back and revisit various parts. But what I think is interesting to me and perhaps the viewers from this point on is that when the six were arrested and sentenced, up until the point where they were released, did the families feel that was closure, that was the end of the story and you could move on with life, or were there any sort of doubts around at that point, or was it just, okay, that's dealt with now and we can rest easy that justice has been done?
Well, where I'm concerned, I can't I can't give you any answer to that because I was only 11. And the fact that 6 men had allegedly committed this crime, this atrocity, I would imagine it did register, but I don't really remember very much about the rest of my childhood. My memories are very fragmented, and my memories are very fragmented about Maxine as well. And I think that having read an awful lot about cognitive therapy and also going to Cruise, which is a bereavement counselling centre, that it's claimed that your brain shuts down certain memories in order to protect itself. And I think that is what most of us have done. Because if you speak to most people who have lost a loved one in an atrocity, it's very rare for you to hear them speak about their loved one. I mean, even now, even with all the campaigning we do, we still don't talk about Maxine because it is just too hard. It's, I have pictures of her all over my house now. 20 years ago, I'd never have had one picture. I never had a picture of her. We never spoke about it at all for fear that it would upset each other. And the last thing we wanted to do was to upset each other. And even now, it's still I'm sorry if I go off on tangents, but
no, you carry on.
But for the inquest, we had to do these personal statements to read to the jury, which, as it turned out, was a waste of time. But when we were asked to do the personal statements, I remember saying to my sister Jane, "Are you going to do one?" She said, No, I'm not going to. And I said, "Well, we'll just do one." And she did hers, and it was almost 3 lines long, and she said, "I can't see her, I can't hear her, and I don't remember her." And that is how powerful and how long lasting these tragedies have on families. And it's true. It is so true.
Yeah.
It affects you in ways that you wouldn't wish on anybody. You would not wish anyone or any family to go through such harrowing, traumatic feelings and exposure to loss.
And every time I've heard you speak about this, and we've been in the same room several times, the raw emotion comes across. I mean, you were the only person who, in all my time in the European Union, brought me to tears when you went out to the EU to speak about this. And I think anyone watching this can feel it and understand the personal pain that still burns there. I must say, it's very strong of you, very brave of you to talk about it publicly the way you do. I think that's one of the things that I've always found the most impressive, because it's so obviously still so painful, and you've dedicated your life to having to, in many ways, having to relive it and speak about it. I mean, that must take an immense personal toll on you.
Yeah, it does. It is hard. You can't explain it. My brother Brian, he's the eldest, Brian. And if anyone's listening who knows him, they will know exactly what I'm talking about. It wasn't until we started campaigning that he opened up more, and our mother opened up more. We found out things that we weren't aware of prior to us campaigning, because we never spoke about it. But Brian had carried and continues to carry this weight of guilt that he drove Maxine to her death that night, because they were living together in the house, and he had said to her, if you iron my shirt, I'll take you to town, I'll drop you off in town. And I mean, Maxine would have ironed his shirt anyway. I mean, if anyone who's young is listening to this, they'll be thinking, what? He was asking his sister, do it yourself. But this is a sign of the times.
It is.
And she did. She ironed his shirt, and he drove her into town and dropped her off on New Street. You could drive to New Street then.
Yeah.
And he was up all night waiting. And he tried to get into town. He couldn't get in. And he stayed up all night waiting for the front door to open.
Take time, Julie. Understand it's difficult.
And there was no sign of her. And he's carried this guilt all his life. And he continues to carry the guilt.
It must be awful. It must be. When you started telling that story, I put myself in his shoes, and the feeling that he must carry with him, an incredible feeling. How awful. There's no words. I just, it springs to mind, and while you're taking a moment there, I just hope that anyone, whoever watches anything like this and feels sympathy for people who commit these kind of acts, looks at this and sees the pain that is caused years and years afterwards by these bastards. And you're doing a fine thing, Julie, by speaking about it. And I'm very, very. I don't know how you do it. But anyway, you're getting me going now. Anyway, so yeah, the effect was long lasting. But let's get on to. You started to campaign, you were saying, around about a decade ago. But what sparked the sort of channeling of all of this emotion and all of the commitment you've got into the campaign? How did that start? How did that come together?
Well, that's really interesting, because I remember in 2009, I was watching the television, and I think it was on the news, and there was all these public inquiries going on, and I'm thinking, there's all these public inquiries, but no one's died. People have been offended or hurt in some way, but no one's died. So why isn't there a public inquiry into the murder of our loved ones? If the Birmingham Six didn't do it, who did? Why is nobody investigating? So that spurred me to write to the then Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, and his name was Chris Sims, asking him what he was doing to investigate what continues to be England's biggest unsolved mass murder of the 20th century. And I also cited the Human Rights Act, Article 2, the right to life.
Yeah.
And he never had the courtesy to respond. He got an inspector to respond, basically telling me to go away. He hadn't got time for the likes of you. So I wrote back and told them how contemptible they both were. And I demand to have a meeting to discuss this, that you're public servants, you're paid for by us, the taxpayers, and as such, I want to have a meeting. They got the desk sergeant to respond, telling me they're both on holiday. So I wrote to my MP, Khalid Mahmood, lovely man.
I've met him, yeah, he's a nice guy.
It is. And it took the the Chief Constable a year to respond to my MP. This is the contempt we've been dealt with over the years by West Midlands Police's senior management.
Yeah.
Do you know how long? Do you know how long it took him to respond to my initial letter in 2009?
Go on.
5 years.
5 years.
5 years. It wasn't until 2014 that he responded to that letter for us to have a meeting with him about the review that we got him to push through the Chief Superintendent Kenny Bell, who I have to say has been very polite and very respectful with regard to what we're trying to do. And we had a meeting with Chris Sims, the Chief Constable, and we had one of our lawyers. We hadn't taken on KRW. We hadn't signed up with KRW at the time. So one of a lawyer that we'd met by pure fluke flew over. Him and his colleague flew over in their own time to come with us to this meeting, and they came from Northern Ireland. And as it happens, Barry now works for KRW. And what a lovely man! Won't have anything bad said about him or any of our team. And he said to us afterwards, he had been in many meetings with chief constables. Being based in Northern Ireland, obviously he would know, and he was an ex-policeman himself.
Yeah.
And he said he had never in all of his life seen family members treated with such utter contempt by a chief constable before. He said if he hadn't have been there himself, he would never have believed this. And I said, well, this is what we've been up against. And this is what we continue to be up against now with the senior management of West Midlands Police.
And I think what people will be interested in digging into, and I want to carry on with the story of the campaign, but I think we need to come back to is and understand why this level of contempt for the people who pay their wages, for the people they're supposed to be serving. Why are these unaccountable, it would appear, police chiefs behaving in this way, as you said, on a mass murder that is unsolved on their patch? Not only are they not investigated or haven't investigated properly, but they're treating people who raise it with contempt. And there has to be a question, and I think we're going to come to it as we go along, as to possible theories as to why this behaviour would be going on, why they would act in this way.
Well, that's a very good question, and I'm not afraid to say, because I've told them this, that they know that their predecessors have got blood on their hands, just like previous UK government's successors have got blood on their hands. What I think an important point to make here is, in 1974, for 11 months in 1974, previous to the Birmingham pub bombings on the 21st of November, the Birmingham and its surrounding areas had been bombed. I think it was 53 times. 53 times, but no one had been injured. No one had been killed.
Yeah.
And the then Home Secretary, Roy Jenkins, his name was Roy Jenkins, he was a Birmingham MP. I think he was a Birmingham MP for Erdington, but I'm not sure. But I know he was a Birmingham MP, but he was also the Home Secretary at the time.
A very famous one.
And the government were trying to implement the Terrorism Act of 1974, but Roy Jenkins refused to sign it off because he thought that this legislation was too draconian. November the 21st, 1974, 21 people were murdered. He comes to Birmingham the following day to offer his condolences. A lot of good that did.
Yeah.
He signed off the bill that day, and it was put into legislation within 1 week.
Way after the shutting the stable gate, way too late there. Way too late. So, I mean, I felt all along with this that there are political reasons why correct investigations haven't gone on. I mean, we spoke about the politicians in the 70s there, but there have been agreements over the Irish Troubles in the years that followed, and
however, I must say,
criminals haven't been followed up.
I must clarify the point. We do not fall under the Good Friday Agreement. So anything that the Blair government, and don't get me started on him, anything that the Blair government organised or signed off, in Blair's hubris, because I don't care what anyone says, he only did all that because he thought he was going to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I'll tell you what, if I drank, I would have got absolutely bladdered, knowing he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize on the back of that. David Trimble did. But that's what he thought he was going to get. But in his hubris, because his arrogance is beyond, oh my God, you couldn't even make a caricature of him over it. He completely forgot and didn't even think about the victims of the terrorist attacks on English soil. What in Northern Ireland and Ireland they call us in Northern Ireland they call us the mainland. He didn't any of the victims from Warrington, Guildford, the M62 coach bombing, Brighton, Harrods, the Docklands bombing in 1996, I think it was. He didn't give not one iota, not one thought to the victims that were murdered and maimed in the bomb attacks by the IRA on his own soil. So we don't come under the Good Friday Agreement.
But there are ways of protecting people that aren't in an agreement.
He also did the toxic deals, didn't he, about the on the run letters. He did all those deals in secret. I mean, that's all out there. But him and Alistair Campbell, who I've had a run-in with on live Channel 4 TV, who's trying to make Martin McGuinness sound like some sort of god, the dirty deals that they did. I've got no time for them whatsoever. And all that they continue to do was to not only continue to bury our dead, but they hoped and prayed that they would be able to try and bury us next to our dead because we dare raise our heads above the parapet. Well,
I think it's fair to say that it's not the only occasion, but it's a notable one where Blair has blood on his hands. I consider Tony Blair to be perhaps one of the most evil men who's ever walked this planet, in my opinion. And certainly him and his government being in bed with terrorists like McGuinness and the deification of these people after the event, saying that they were peacemakers and all the rest of it. They were bloodthirsty criminal murderers who no British government should have been doing deals with. I have my own view as to how the British government should have taken these people on. And it didn't involve a deal. It involved more direct action. But I have to be careful not to be too carried away. But yes, Tony Blair is a subject that we could perhaps talk about for hours. But let's talk about more savoury things, better things that will leave a better taste in the mouth than that evil swine. So the organisation came together and you began campaigning. And I think I met you during a Police and Crime Commissioner campaign, and I think that was in the relatively early years of it. So tell us a little bit how it's developed, because you have had notable successes along the way as well as massive efforts to hold you back, haven't you?
Oh, yes. If they can put a barrier up, the British authorities, they have and they will do and continue to do. However, the notable success is based upon four notable things. The first is the families, how the families have come together. Whilst we were out in limbo, we didn't know each other, but now we have come together and we are a tight-knit family. That there are 10 families that are represented by our legal team, but there are other families out there that don't want to be in the front line, but they support everything that we do on their loved ones' behalf. Our legal team, KRW Law, who are based in Belfast, that should speak for itself. The fact that we had to literally cross the water to find someone to represent us. But they are experts in this area, and we have the best team, without a shadow of that. And they continue to represent us pro bono. I dread to think what our bill it must be, but they are fantastic. Also, Andy Richards of the Birmingham Mail. Without Andy, it was Andy Richards who was the one who identified that we'd never had an inquest. And it was because of him informing Barry, one of our solicitors, about this, that we were able to try and push for us to have the inquest. And last, but by no means least, the most significant thing are our supporters. Our supporters are the bedrock of what we are and who we are and why we continue to fight, because they give us the strength and the tenacity to carry on. That they are an extension of our family. In fact, they are all my brothers and my sisters, our brothers, our sisters, because without them, we would never, ever have got as far as we have. There are so many people, and the football fraternity who have had so much bad press over the years. I can tell you now that that's gone. That has gone, because there are no rivalries. All the rivalries are put aside where we're concerned. There's no colour. There's no prejudice. There's nothing. They come together. They bury whatever their rivalries are, as far as football is concerned. That is buried. Whatever their politics is, that's put to one side. Because when they join us in one message, and that is to let right be done. The football fraternity, Aston Villa, Birmingham City, West Bromwich Albion, Millwall, Chelsea. I wrote them down. Clabby Loyal in Northern Ireland, the Birmingham City's Disabled Supporters Association. They've been with us for years. The Rangers fans are just unbelievable. Hales Owen Town, Stourbridge Loyal, Spurs, Oxford United, Grimsby, Coleraine FC, Kilmarnock FC, and so many more. That they are buying specially designed flags to fly from their homes, and when the football pitch is open, they hope to be able to take them in, to fly the flag of the colour of their football team, but with our logo in the middle. And some of them have got the names of each of the 21 on their flags. How is it possible to thank these people? And the things that others do. Matt, he goes out. He bought a car. Matt bought a car and had it all labelled and designed in Justice for the 21 memorabilia stuff and messages on there. Then you've got Ian Williams and Glenn Randall and Darren Picocci, otherwise known as Gok. Just last year, they walked in the cold and the rain from Birmingham to London. They walked 178 miles in a week to raise awareness and raise funds in memory of our loved ones. Then we've got Mike Luddy. Without him, none of this would be possible. Then there's Jim, there's Kevin, there's Paul, there's Mark, there's so many people. There are so many, and Dawn and Kirsty and another Dawn, Leanne, Jay, there's Steve, Charlie up north, there's Louis, Louis used to get this. Louis is Spanish. He used to play for Valencia FC. He sends us special things over for us to raffle to raise money. It's Brilliant. Just, I can't tell you how humbling it is and how truly blessed we feel to have so many incredible people across the world supporting us. It's just, I need to say this. My mom always said, no one cares. To quote her, she said, no one gives a toss. No one gives a toss. They're not interested. Well, you know what? Mom now knows that's no longer true, because everything that they do you know what they call themselves? They call themselves Margaret's Army.
Oh.
And that's Mom. That's Mom's name.
Yeah. Well, it's lovely, and I must say, even as we're talking, I can see across the bottom of the screen Ozzy from Belfast, who watches some of these programs from time to time. He's been putting messages of support across the screen. I can
Thank
assure
you.
you, when this gets shared around, when people do this, and anyone watching this, please share this around, because we will get so many more people supporting this cause. I can guarantee you, Julie, I guarantee you, the more people who see it, the more will support it. And you said, how can you ever thank the supporters enough? You do it by doing what you're doing now. What you're doing now is all the thanks anyone who supports this cause will ever need, because we can all fall in behind you and all cheer you on, but you're the one doing it, you know? So, and you're the one putting yourself through it. And I do want to say as well about the footballers, the football teams. I remember being in the centre of Birmingham, and we had that big event there, and I was one of the people who went up on the
Yeah,
speakers
yeah,
platform,
yeah,
and there was I've no idea how many people there were, but it seemed like thousands converged
yes,
on the centre of Birmingham outside the town hall, and they were all marching in with their different colours on,
yes.
and they
I was
from
asking
each
for
different
a
angle,
yes,
all, yeah, all singing "Justice for the 21," and it was a moment, a rare moment for me, being a black country bloke, being able to stand in the middle of Birmingham with a Wolves tie on and know that I was okay with everyone, because everyone was so on side, and to see Blues and Villa fans rubbing shoulders and Albion fans, mixing with the Wolves fans, whoever was there, I thought, there's few things that can make that happen.
yeah,
People who aren't from this area might not know how fierce our rivalries
yes,
are. There,
yes,
there are many things that make us all stand shoulder to shoulder, but the cause achieved that, and that in itself shows the power of what you're doing. Because I can't think of anything else that you would have ever got those people on the same side for. Nothing. No, I've wrapped my mind afterwards. There's not a single cause that could. But one of the things I want to go back to is you talk about the legal cases. I do recall there was an issue. You couldn't get any funding, could you? Couldn't get any legal aid as well with the
we still
case.
have no legal aid. We've been if you were to count up every time I've applied for it, every time my mother's applied for it, every time other family members have applied for it, we must have been refused legal aid 14 times.
On what
14.
grounds?
Well, it's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. This is how fantastic our football fraternity is, and our supporters from all over the UK, Ireland as well, because we have supporters from both sides of the troubles, because we don't take sides. Their loss is equal to ours. Our grief is equal to theirs. How can you take sides? To me, it's wrong and it's mad. That's not who we are. But when we got and we won to get our inquest heard, reopened, the chief coroner, who had just retired, Sir Peter Thornton, who was made a Sir once he was starting to do our inquest, make of that what you will, he had decided to have a very limited scope of what could be brought in, what could be discussed, like informant issues and like, for instance, the Birmingham Six, the men who became known as Birmingham Six, who were charged and served 16 years, but then appealed and were released, rightly so. Paddy Hill, who was one of the Birmingham Six, is one of our staunchest supporters, by the way. But because the chief coroner was going for such a limited scope, we couldn't, in good conscience, allow him to continue with that. So we decided to judicially review him, and we applied for legal aid. Do you know what the legal aid agent, they wrote back to me, and they refused us. They refused me legal aid. And do you know what they said? They said in the letter, and I've still got the letter. They said, we're not giving you access to the legal aid because clearly your crowdfunding is going so well that they were directing us to use it as the default mechanism to cover legal costs. And the second reason was, get this, quote, "We see no merit in your case." So that makes them judge and jury. So
That's outrageous.
Why bother with judges? Why bother with juries? Yeah, that's what it says in the letter. We see no merit in your case. Our football fraternity helped in 5 weeks. 5 weeks, they helped us raise £35,000 to judicially review the coroner. And guess what? We won. We won.
Oh.
So if we'd have listened to the legal aid agency, that would have been yet another miscarriage of justice. However, the chief coroner decided to appeal. Why did he decide to appeal? One, because he knew he couldn't allow the scope to be widened because the government were pulling his strings, because there's just too much that they don't want to be out there in the public eye. So guess what? All he had to do, he hadn't got to worry about raising funds. All he had to do was put his hand in a very, very, very deep bucket of money, our money, by the way, and just sign off on whatever was needed for his legal team to appeal the case. So then we had to raise another £35,000. Guess what? Our football fraternity and our supporters from around the world came together once again and helped us raise that money in a matter of weeks. We will never, ever, ever be able to thank them for everything they've done and everything they continue to do for us, because they are our cornerstone and our strength, and they help us to be the voice of our loved ones, because if we're not, we know for sure no one else will be.
No, and that's going to lead into, in the last few minutes, I want to talk about something exciting that you're doing. But I want to just round off with, where are we at the moment with the campaign? And I'm going to say this again at the end, and we're going to attach this to the video when it goes out. But let people know how they can help you.
Okay. Where we're currently at, we are pushing the Home Secretary. So whoever listens to this who lives in the United Kingdom, I would like to ask you, please write to your MP on our behalf, and please ask them to write to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who appears to be quite supportive of us having a public inquiry. If they can give a public inquiry to everyone else and everything else, then why should our loved ones be discriminated against and not have one? Please help us to push for a public inquiry and show your support. Write to your MP and ask your MP to push forward your support for us to finally have a free and transparent public inquiry. We are waiting to have a meeting with Priti Patel, actually, the Home Secretary, but because of the restrictions, it keeps being postponed. But I do hope it will come off, because I think she's got something about I mean, we are apolitical. We look for cross-party support, but we've been pushing for a public inquiry for years, and she has, and that's from the help from, I must say, that's from the help from Andy Street, the West Midlands Mayor. He has been fantastic. I must say that he has. He has kept every promise he's ever made to us and more. I've got to say that about him, because
That's good to hear.
But with reference to how else, if you want to help, just support us. We have a Facebook, private Facebook group. If you want to join it, I think it's called Justice for the 21, the number 4. But if you want to follow us, I have a Facebook account under Maxine. You can see her picture behind me under Maxine's name. It's Maxine Hambleton. That's Hambleton. And we have the Facebook account to keep her memory alive, and as a way to keep the memory of all the 21 alive, because we don't do it just for Maxine, we do it for all of the 21 equally. We also have a Twitter account, which is at Justice for the 21, the Justice for the number 4, and 21, the number 21. We also have a website, which I think is up. You can see that we have a website. We also have merchandise. We have T-shirts that we sell, and 100% of the money goes into the Justice for the 21 bank account, which we are raising funds for to help to pay for our legal fees when we next need them. We have T-shirts. We have mugs. So if you have a football team, you can have your football team's badge on it and the Justice for the 21 logo imprinted on it. If you go on to if you go on to our Facebook, our website, it should come up with the merchandise of what we have available. We also have glass templates that act like, chopping boards. We have those. You can have those designed in any way you wish. We have pin badges that we sell. We have car stickers. Oh my God, what else do we have? Our support. These are all the ideas of our supporters. They're just fantastic. I can't. If any of you are listening, and you know me, or whether you know me or not, please know, until the day I die, and until the day all of our families die, you all will forever be in our hearts, because you have helped to fill a hole that has been left there by the incompetency of the very people that are meant to represent and support us. Thank you.
And that leads us on. We've got the last couple of minutes here to the really tasty morsel at the end of this that I've been saving for the end. You've heard how Julie and the campaign have struggled to get the crimes properly addressed, how there are issues with the policing, particularly in the West Midlands, and with politicians, and they've been held back. So Julie, in typical fashion, has decided to take matters into her own hands, and perhaps you can tell in the next couple of minutes. You feel free to do a little broadcast on it. Tell us what you're doing.
I've decided to run to become the next West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, because the current incumbent has not in any way, shape or form fulfilled his role, which is primarily, I have to say, two things. The first is to represent victims of crime. He's done nothing for us at all. And also to bring the senior management of police to account. Something else he hasn't done. Even Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, is about to put together an independent council to look at the police and crime commissioners across the country who are not holding the senior management of the police forces to account, which is exactly what I would do if I was fortunate enough to be voted in, because I know what it's like to be ignored and treated with contempt when you need the police the most. And I will do everything in my power to support every victim of crime within the West Midlands. I've had meetings with Home Secretaries, I've had meetings with Lords, I've sat on as a witness on a select committee in Parliament, I've been to meetings with MPs. So I am not political. I will be standing as an independent, and I am as apolitical as they come. There will be no political parties pulling my strings. I have no political mechanism of funding. Our supporters have already put together, because you have to pay £5,000 to apply. I already have the £5,000. Last year I spent £2,000-3,000 to try and promote it using posters and such, but I'm not going to do that this year because of COVID and one thing and another. So we're going to try and push me through social media. So if you live in the West Midlands and you want to support me, my name hopefully will be on the voting list, because this is for you. You get to pick who you want to be your West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner. And I can assure you there'll be nothing to do with lining my own pockets or lining up friends for jobs or having my strings pulled by some political party, because none of those will apply. I will go in and I will do, to the best of my ability, what I can do for every single victim of crime within the West Midlands.
Well, I'll tell you what, Julie, I think they must be quaking in their boots, and I think the public must be delighted, because I can think of no stronger, more passionate and individual-minded person to do that job. And so, I'm, as someone who formerly ran for that post myself, I'm delighted to see you going for it. And I can't imagine there being a better candidate. I really can't. I think that's as much as I can say without losing my neutrality as a host, isn't it? But I think you know where I'm coming from. I'd absolutely love to see it. We've come to the end of our time. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for what you've said, what you continue to do. Please keep in touch with us, and I'll give you the final word on it before we have to shut down.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to your team, and also for all your support over the years and your help, because you did keep your promise and all the promises you made. And for that, even my mother hasn't forgot that. But to everybody out there, if you know us or if you don't know us, please support us. We're not political, we're not divisive, and we're most certainly not discriminatory. We have supporters from all cultures, all societies, and all backgrounds. There's no membership, there's no fee, there's no strings. Just support us. All we want to do is let right be done for our 21. God bless you all. Stay safe and stay well. And thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And please, please share this around your social media. Share it on Facebook, retweet it, email it to people. Let people see what is happening and what this campaign's all about and what Julie's speaking about. From me and from Julie, a good night to you all. And my personal thanks to Julie for coming on tonight and my 100% support going forward from here. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. So good night from head to head.
Thank you.
All the details to follow what Julie's doing will be on the screen. And good night, everyone.